Hi listeners, Jason here. We are excited to finally announce registrations for the biggest psych health and safety community event ever. The inaugural The Psych Health and Safety Conference will be held at the Sofitel Wentworth, Sydney, June 19 to 20, 2024 and offer concurrent virtual attendance. It'll feature live podcast recordings with OG researchers including Laynnea Myles and Michael Leiter of Burnout fame, Psych Health and Safety USA podcast host I. David Daniels, Australian super experts including the likes of David Burrows, a special 10-year anniversary integrated approaches to workplace mental health panel with authors Tony LaMontagne, Angela Martin and Kat Page, hand-picked case studies from organisations doing it well, and a very special interview with plaintiff Zaggy Kozarov by Catherine Dunlop on that High Court case which we previously covered on the podcast. This event will sell out. Get in quick to secure tickets at early bird prices for the 2-day conference, pre-conference masterclasses, and the VIP dinner. The first 200 in-person registrations also get a copy of her latest book, The Burnout Challenge, signed by Laynnea Myles herself. Find out more and register at www.psychealthandsafetyconference.com. Now, on to this episode.
The occupational health and safety profession has several places to get information about both physical and psychological safety, but not every conversation can be genuinely described as unfiltered. We'll have an unfiltered conversation about health and safety with two safety professionals who are also podcast hosts up next on this episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast.
From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. As workplace mental health has become a global priority, there's a greater focus on addressing psychosocial hazards. Each episode, we look at psychological safety from an occupational health and safety perspective. Let's talk Psych Health and Safety. Welcome to this week's Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. So the occupational health and safety profession, as it stands, and again, for the most part, is a pretty traditional kind of industry. It has its own set of standards and practices and views of what's required to have safety in the workplace. And truthfully, many of the voices that we hear, the standards that are instituted, were created by men, and the vast majority of them are white men. However, new voices have emerged in recent years that have unique approaches to addressing safety. What it sounds like, what it looks like, and what it is. And one of the set of voices that I come across here recently is they're the host of a podcast called SHE Unfiltered. And interestingly, we're going to get into details because I've never asked either of my guests exactly where that comes from. I think I do. I think I get the irony in the title. But in this episode, we're going to have an unfiltered conversation about safety, and it'll probably be a little wide-ranging, but that's okay. Let's go. And I tend to start these conversations out with a question. So in this case, I have two guests. So I'll ask the same question, slightly changed a little bit for each guest. So, who is Laynnea Myles?
Hi, everyone. I just want to say, Dr. Daniels, it's such an honor to have SHE Unfiltered on your podcast. So we're definitely honored. So thank you for that. So who is Laynnea Myles? So Laynnea Myles is someone that is energetic, fun, personable, and loves, and passionate about environmental health and safety. And it's something that is one of my core values is I eat, sleep, and breathe it. And so you'll hear me say, or my friends or even family will hear me say safety first or safety always. And so that's something that is really recognizable for me and for my friends and family. And so that is me in a nutshell. And I would have to say I'm very ambitious. So you'll hear more about my ambition later on.
That works good for me. Works good for me. So, another similar question to a different person. So, who is Dr. Francene Scott-Diehl?
So I guess me and Linnea share a lot of similarities, but I'll start again too by saying thank you so much for having us. We started our podcast because we wanted to elevate voices in our profession that weren't heard as well. So we are thankful that you're having us talk to your audience. So again, thank you so much for that. But for me, I think my answer is pretty simple. I chose safety chose me. It wasn't something that I just woke up in the morning like, oh, I want to be in safety. I think because of the way that I grew up, very unsecure, very low socioeconomic. And, a lot of what safety does is it tries to control the controllables. But growing up like I did, I didn't have a way to control anything or even think ahead to even do risk assessments, risk analysis. I mean, we grew up in a time where we just kind of lived by the seat of our pants. So a part of me is I'm just regular Fran. I think I've been gifted to be able to do safety as a profession, but it has become a central tenet of my life. And so similar to Linnea, I eat, breathe, and live safety as well, but probably for different reasons. Because for me, I think that it just has become a part of who I am because of just how I was raised. So when I talk to people, I say, hey, we are fortunate because we can look down the road and we know what can kill us, the stuff that kills us. Versus when I grew up, we kind of were raised by wolves. We're lucky to be alive. Thinking about some of the crazy things we did, like walk across canals, with alligators in the bottom, just because we're doing a shortcut. But who was going to tell us not to do that? So I think a lot of just who I am is a result of how I was raised. So that's why I do safety because I know what could have been. So
Absolutely. Yeah, you're making me think about my own very similar upbringing, and yeah, the first time. So I ended up in the fire rescue service for about 30 years, but the first time I saw a fire I was 6, and we were living on the corner of 24th or 25th and Cherry. I'm just actually trying to think. Actually, it was 27th and Cherry. This was in Seattle, Washington. There's a house on the corner right now. It was the same house we lived in when I was a kid. So that house is old. And we had a fire in our kitchen, and I'm not sure if my mom was there or not. There were often, I started watching my siblings really early because she'd be out trying to make money to take care of us. And so I don't remember whether she was there or not, but I remember the pot was on fire, throwing it out into the grass, and the grass catching on fire. We didn't call the fire department, none of that kind of stuff. I didn't know about calling. They didn't have 911 back in the day. So again, to your point, a lot of people, and I'll say this, a lot of people learn about safety at work because they don't learn about it at home because there's nobody there to teach it. So before we get, so one other kind of standard question I ask both guests, and Dr. Fran, I'll have you answer this one first. So what does psychological health and safety mean to you?
So psychological health and safety is now, it's a big deal now because I got my MPH in 2005 and I wrote a paper talking about mental health and how it's going to be the next frontier of safety. Now, my professors at that time thought I was crazy because it was in '05 and I chose my actual program allowed us to choose 3 electives and I chose them all in mental health because I couldn't understand why people were the way they were. And I think I had just come to the understanding that some people in my family on my dad's side were really mentally ill. Their substance abuse, they were really mentally ill. And so it started to make sense. So I wanted to get to the mental side. But now it is commonplace. So for me, psychological safety means the ability to show up exactly who you are, for us to understand our human limitations, for us really to understand that we're humans. I think for so long we get so engrossed in trying to protect things and people and property that we think it is systematic, and we take the person out of it as if they're supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to show up well every day. They're supposed to be their best selves every day. And so I think for me, because it's going to mean something different to everybody, that psychological safety for me just means that we can show up in our whole human selves, and we recognize the humanity in others, and we accept people for their humanity. That's not something we even talk about in safety. We talk about human performance, but we don't delve a lot into humanity. So that is really what it means for me.
Right. Laynnea, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and just to kind of add what Fran mentioned is it's so funny because now you hear the buzzword of psychological safety, and this is something that I felt that I've dealt with from the beginning of my career. And as a Black woman, it really resonates with me because I can go to work and feel like, oh my goodness, I'm doing my best, I'm going above and beyond. But as soon as I make a mistake on something, then I'm judged. Or if I disagree with someone on a proposal, do I feel safe enough that I can really speak my mind? And when I say speak my mind in a way that I can articulate it well, but speak my mind and not have any retribution from that. And that is something that I always try to instill in the employees all the time, because when you look at EHS and the safety profession, you want employees to be able to bring forth ideas and their concerns. And if I continue to hear, well, we already told someone else and they shut it down, and now I'm considered this type of person. And so, why would employees even speak up about anything? So, we have these programs to say, oh, you see something, say something, speak up. But do we really want people to speak up? If someone speaks up, how is someone going to look at me? Oh, well, Laynnea, she's a troublemaker. Oh boy, here, what is she going to say now? So I think we still have some ways to go, but I've always thought about psychological safety, but it never really, now it has that term and it's very popular. So that's just one of the things that I would like to add to that.
Sure. I oh, God, I'm so relating to the conversation. Yeah, there's a saying that your actions speak so loud, I can't hear a word that you're saying. And in the safety profession, like a lot of professions, there are the words. I mean, people talk about safety all the time,
Yes.
in all kinds of occupations. Oh, safety is our number one priority. Is it? Be honest, really, is it? So
Well,
if
it
it's your
is a
number one
priority. It is a priority
right,
because what? Priorities change, right?
right. Yeah, but I have to wonder in some cases whether it ever really was, because I can tell what's important to you based on where you place emphasis and based on where your actions follow your emphasis. So you could talk about it all you want, but the people around you won't even speak up and tell you that you're not clothed well. They won't. They won't say anything. You sit in these meetings and talk about safety related things, but people aren't being honest about their real feelings about things because they have experienced what happens when they do. So it really isn't. There's a difference between safety, the thing we do, and safe, the feeling that we get. And there's a lot of safety activity that doesn't result in people feeling safe at all. It just doesn't.
And
It just doesn't.
I'll even add to that we demonize people when they have accidents. It's like we forget the whole human piece of it. It's like we say we're doing human performance. You got air traps. We're trying to keep, but we demonize people. And then you have people who underreport because we're bonus and incentivized in some organizations. And so the real question is they walk around hurt they're not even feeling psychologically safe to say, look, I hurt myself and I need to be treated for it. Like I had a guy who wrecked our vehicle at a company and went and fixed it out of his own pocket because he thought he was going to lose his job because that's the way his supervisor presented. And so it's not even just us. I mean, because as safety professionals, as Black safety professionals, we feel it too. We have to be perfect. Me and Laynnea talk about this
Yes,
all the time.
all the time.
But now we step into the worker to say, if we are using human beings to perform this work, do we create an environment where they don't feel psychologically safe? You know, look at in COVID, people died. And we had a guy that came to work, crashed his vehicle because his mama died. But then we have to step back and say, did we create an environment where we even cared because production was so high? So I mean, I look at that too, and we demonize people, leaders. I say we because as a collective in safety, not that I'm doing it, they'd be like, oh my God, there's Fran. She done had 2 accidents. If she wasn't so good at X, we wouldn't even want her here. And it's like, she's a human being. Are we even talking about humanity in that way?
And
So I look
employees,
at it
that's
from,
true.
yeah, yeah. I look at it from the employee perspective too, but I relate to what she's saying because we just were having this conversation. We didn't even know this would come up driving over here about learning how to give ourselves grace, forgiving ourselves for making mistakes. And so, and being vulnerable to say, I made that mistake. And so, not that I'm just sympathetic to it, I'm empathetic because I've been there.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I'm coming to the point where I'm taking it back even further than that. I question whether or not many of these things should even be. Why do we even call them mistakes? Who is it that established the criteria that says that this was a mistake? Every system is perfectly designed to produce whatever it's producing. So if it's producing people getting injured, that's because the system was set up to injure people. If folks are depressed and feeling bad, it's because they're in a. It's not the human being. So there's a thing called. Uh, often we tend to pay a lot more attention to the human being and not the environment we put the human being in. And
he
those
preaching.
this
You
person,
preaching. Yeah.
this person, when the ad went up to hire some new person, nobody said, "Oh, we want terrible, really bad people to come work
Employees,
for us."
exactly.
So why is it a month later they're all of a sudden bad? What changed? Not them. What changed is the environment that the person, and that's what's called fundamental attribution error, where we focus on the human being and don't pay any attention to the environment we've placed that same person in. And this is where psychological health and safety is so important. It's not. Yes, there are people who do have diagnosed mental illness. Yes, there are people who have poor mental health days. But there are also people, they're fine, but the environment is horrible.
Now
The
you done
environment's just
preach,
horrible.
right?
It's
You
been
done
horrible
preached the
before.
whole.
It's been horrible for years. It was designed to be horrible.
You know, we when we learned safety long time ago, before it became safety in health, you would hear philosophers in books say that conflict is a tool of management. We don't say that a lot anymore. That management likes to embed conflict in the system, leaders, to keep the emphasis off what really matters. Because if we all focus on the conflict, then we never place the emphasis on the lack of leadership in some areas where it should be. Um, but I think we're at that hour now where, because I mean, National Safety Council picked this up as one of their initiatives over the next few years. I think we're at that hour now that we have to acknowledge the entire total worker. And we don't even talk about that the worker has pressures at home. They have a life outside of your production lines. They actually may have kids. They may have aging or ill parents. And so I'm ecstatic that we talk about things from a psychological standpoint because we typically only talk about it from a physicality standpoint. Are you physically fit to do the job? Not are you psychologically fit to do the job? And each of us, we talk about this range of normal. Each of us can be depressed. Each of us can feel despondent. Each of us. So I'm excited that we even talk about this because there were years when we were the engineering discipline that we thought of nothing but physical agents. Physical hazards, physical agents.
So,
So
you're leading me to the next curiosity that I have, and Laynnea, I want you to talk about this first. What focus or what role do safety professionals have in addressing things like psychological health and workplace mental health? What is the role of a safety professional? Because now, I'll prompt this a little bit further. There are a lot of traditional safety professionals who don't think we should be in this conversation at all. So, what do you think our role should be?
I definitely think that we should. It's so important because just like Fran alluded to, you can't, what you go through at home, you can't just flick a switch and say, okay, you know what? I just went through a death of my mother. Now I'm at work. Now I'm okay. No, what you go through at home, you will have that same emotion and feeling when you go to work. And so one of the things that we incorporated was a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, we had our medical response team get training on mental health awareness and psychological safety. Because why? Our employees need to understand when they see people who they work with, John, who every day they are excited and energized, but then the next day they feel something, they see something off. How do they recognize those signs? And oftentimes when a manager sees that, what, they're not performing well, so let me put them on a performance improvement plan. When that's not the case, you have to understand your worker, you have to understand your employee. So that's one of the things we started to do, and we also implemented Wellness Wednesdays because, again, EHS, health and safety, we should take the lead. And so we have had things where we have talks about mental health. It is important because, again, when we talk about employee morale, that is a big attribute. And I know we've talked about the leaders, but now you can start to see employees emulating the leaders if someone is hurt, right? If you have this record, oh, we've gone 2 million hours without a lost time accident, and then someone gets hurt, you hear another employee talking to another employee saying, why did you, man, we could have had a pizza party or we could have had that. So now, because they see it from leaders, now it's seeping into the employees. So how do you get that involved and how do you change that narrative? And so absolutely, we are there on the forefront. We have the ability to change and we have to incorporate mental health, even if it's not being driven by HR. So I absolutely believe that it's our role.
Sure, sure. Dr. Fran, what you want to add to that?
yeah, I mean, she kind of hit it on the head that, you know, there was a time health wasn't even a part of us. It was just straight safety engineers. Design has us out. Prevention through design, right? And now that we've bundled the two, so much so that Harvard has their program as public health and safety. A lot of these programs now are blending the two because they know that they go together. You got Safety leaders have to be empathetic to that. I look at my team and say, what's wrong? My employees were my daughter. I looked at her and said, what's wrong? And I think leaders all have that ability to feel. It's just what are we saying is the priority? Some of my mottos on my team is we all make mistakes. You're allowed to make mistakes. I don't judge you on your best day, worst day, but I ain't judging you for your best day either. So don't come show me something shiny. I judge you on consistent effort. But if there is something wrong, you have an obligation to your family first. Jobs come and go. COVID taught us that. Companies laid off almost all their people. And your family had to reconcile with that. It wasn't the job who cared. Yeah, they gave you an EAP referral, but how many people even really know how to access that? I think we talked so much about the EAP, but I'm encouraging leaders to put themselves through the EAP to see, is it easy? Is it readily available? Is it giving the employee the kind of help that they need? So I just piggyback a little bit off that because safety people, sometimes we are the stopgap. We
Yep.
see
You are the
people when they're
go-to.
injured. We see the result of the injury. We see the result when they can't come back to work. Um, and you'll hear sometimes people say the opposite, even HR, they process determination. So they get a bad rap, because they're like, okay, you can't come back to your job. And so a lot of times we end up being the voice of that, where we're interfacing with that person and being able to say, hey, so I think safety leaders, whether they want to or not, especially the men, because sometimes I'm not being funny, sometimes the men struggle with that because they actually feel like I said safety is a nurture science. We don't even talk about nurture science outside of the medical profession, but it is a nurture science because we sometimes, as safety leaders, we have to be the voice of reason and the voice of nurture. Like, Fran is never going to come back to this job the same. We had a catastrophic event, and the thing of HR is systematic. How do we process them out? Our jobs is to say, hold up, can she do something else? Because we have a lot of the terminology. When we pay you and rate you through workers' comp, we talk about your working life. So I agree with her. Whether we like it or we don't, workers put their working lives in our hands. And so I think, especially as safety pros, we have that responsibility. And so we need to equip ourselves with the EQ, the emotional intelligence, to be able to say, okay, look, Fran can't do that. But as we're getting back this information on what Fran can do, there may be other opportunities to salvage Fran's career versus just process her out. So we have all the tools. We get the work comp data, we get the information, we know what your rating is, we know all
Yeah.
these things in safety. And so we can't throw the mic away and say, yeah, we have no parts of that. It's the HR deal now. Because it happened under our watch. So if you're a real safety leader who is really trying to prevent and protect your people, you got skin in the game for that, Dr.
That's right.
Daniels. You got
Yeah,
skin in the game
yeah,
for that.
sure enough.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the Flourish DX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow Flourish DX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the Flourish DX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
Yeah. And you again, I just love these very timely transitions, because when you mentioned the reality that those who present mostly those who present as male, whether they identify as not, tend to get this series of messages about how they're supposed to behave. And one of those behaviors is that you're supposed to be, hard and crass and tough and objective and so on and so forth. Now, I this is an area where I actually feel that I was fortunate to be raised by a single mom, because that's not a message that I got because there was no men around to give it to me. I was the oldest. So that's not a message that I got. When I got out into the world, folks would say all kinds of things about you're too soft or whatever. And I'm not soft. I'm just smarter than you to be able to figure out that this has got two sides to it, that sometimes we have to be objective, but sometimes it's necessary to be subjective. Qualitative stuff's important, but quantitative is important as well. It's finding that balance. And a lot of that came from my mom and my aunt, to be quite honest. But I do want to talk about, and again, I can't resist the view in my head that says SHE Unfiltered. Was there some? So you don't tell the secret. But Fran, talk a little bit about some of the unique psychological and emotional challenges associated with being a woman in the profession.
Ooh. Um, I started a long time ago. So I started in the early 90s. Um, and so there were not a lot of people, one, that looked like me. And when you talk about intersectionality, Black and female, there were not. So I didn't have mentors that looked like me that could say, "Hey, Fran, you don't want to say that. Hey, Fran, you may not want to do that." And so just being in the field, without that, Laynnea loves this term that be the change. That's how we met because I was her mentor. She's much younger than I am, but that's how we met. We had a mentorship, which now it's a friendship. It's way more than that. Um, but it was very challenging, and then I excelled quickly because I was certified within my first 5 years out the gate, where a lot of people couldn't pass the ASP because back then you had to have 65% in every category. It wasn't overall, and it was a written test until the early 2000s where you had to sit and wait, and I mean, you had to know your stuff back then because remember, Dr. Brower, all of them, they were engineers, and so a lot of what they tested us on was the engineering functions of safety. So I will just say that it wasn't a lot of people that were like me. It wasn't a lot of space being held in spaces for people like me. I remember my first job in safety, and my boss was like, I don't even have a safety degree. And so they called me degree girl. I mean, literally, they called me degree girl, and I had to do all the crap work, things that people on the team who were much less skilled. Now, I had the theoretical, but in any job, you're looking for mentorship, you're looking for training, for people to train you. And the way the universe had it, because I said, we prepare ourselves and we show up, and there is, universe, God, and there's opportunities that you have prepared for. My current leader at the time, he ended up having surgery, and so I had to fill in at a board meeting for him, and that elevated my career. Now, mind you, I wasn't ready or I didn't think I was ready, but the universe saw different. And I tell people it has been challenging, but it's also been rewarding. But the reason why I even got the PhD to go back and teach was to bring people along that look like me because we are the ones dying at work, people of color. And we need to hear from people that look like us telling us what we can do to better ourselves. So it's a blessing and curse of safety. You're going to be tested and tried, but I tell people don't give up, because I'm an example that you can make a very lucrative career out of it, and you use your difference. Quit trying to fight your difference to assimilate and use your difference because your difference is a gift. And so that was all I told Laynnea. Don't change that. Be that. It was stuff I'd be like, okay, you can't say that. You know, don't change yourself. Be that. Be everything you are and a little more. Now you can't say it like that, but let's try to say it like this because of my own pitfalls. But she's vastly successful as well. And that's the part that I didn't get. People telling me, Fran, for years I permed my hair. I never would wear my braids. Um, I never would go into a meeting not dressed to the nines. And now I'm like, I don't hire people for what's on their head. I hire 'em for what's in their head. And so that's my motto. So I mean, I could talk about that all day because in reality, we're fighting something that God gifted us with. You're fighting to assimilate to something when really, if you look at the sheer numbers, it's more people of color doing this work. The numbers are on our side. So use your difference. Quit trying to fight it. That would be what I would tell my younger self. And quit apologizing for your difference. Because there was a time I apologized for it. Like, I wish I didn't have to do this. I wish my hair was this. Um, and it's like I bet God, because I'm not super religious, but I believe in things orchestrating higher than myself. I believe in luck too, but luck meets preparation in the road. I would fight things that I think the universe was like, girl, I gave you that. And that is really a big tool, a big weapon of mass destruction in your tool belt if you just allow it to be. And so that's just when you talk about intersectionality, you got both of our full attention. That's why we started our podcast,
Right.
because
Okay.
she stands for safety, health, environment, but it also stands for she, two women. And so that was Linnea's idea, but it was a play on words, it was a play on words. She was like, I got it. This is what we're gonna call ourselves. And so Yeah, I was fortunate to meet her because now the teacher becomes the student. It's things Laynnea teach me. She teaches me about how to laugh things through and how not to take myself so seriously. So I tell her every day I love her and I'm blessed that I know her. And I tell her, don't forget me because you're going to have to hire me one day.
Right, right. So, Linnea, add a little bit to that. What can you add to that conversation about some of the, it is unique, in the profession. Last I heard that um, the profession is majority men. It's just majority
Male and
men.
pale,
Yes,
what they
yes,
say.
yes. So share a little bit more about what's unique about your experience.
Yeah, and just so I didn't pay Fran to say that about me, just FYI. Yeah. No, you have to embrace your differences, like Fran mentioned. And so a lot of my opportunities that I've had, I've been in general industry. But even within general industry, I do have construction projects. I've had projects in majority of um, every company that I've worked for. And the first thing when they see a female over EHS in the construction field, on the construction site, they think I'm just an assistant or in help or a helper. And so it's funny because I do have consultants that work for me. And so I'll walk around and they'll think that, oh, they'll go right up to the male and ask them questions. And then the person will look at me, oh, this is my boss. She knows the answers. And so, especially when, I give them a little taste of my knowledge, my construction knowledge, then they're okay. Oh, and it's always funny. It's always surprising when they see that because they're not used to seeing a female on the construction site and two, leading EHS. And so playing to that difference, I already know I'm going to be looked at differently. So I do have a Dallas Cowboy hard hat because I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I know a lot of people aren't, but when I say I use that difference, because I use that as a talking point. So one, it starts conversations. So I know I'm a female, but how do I get the conversation started so I can have that conversation, so I can get that? We talk about buy-in and trust. That's how I get that trust. And then when I speak their talk, their not their language, then they understand. But it has been challenging at first, you know. Well, you don't know, and I've been in the field for 20 years, but I also look younger than what I am. So not only being a woman, a Black woman, but looking younger. Oh, you just graduated from college. You just and so you don't know anything. So whereas if it was a male, they would, regardless of how they look, they would always think that they are more knowledgeable or are the head. And so it has been difficult at times, but I am fortunate and I thank God for Fran because having those conversations to help me navigate different scenarios really, really has helped me. Now, are there times where I still learn how to handle different situations? Yes, every moment. But it has been a blessing because it's always an opportunity to say, hey, again, don't change who you are. I don't have to have a serious, mean face for someone to take me serious. No, I'm always smiling. So this is me. I still can articulate it. I still know the information that I need to know and have that respect. And so that's one of the things that I would just add to that. Go ahead,
I
Fran.
want to add, yeah, I want to add to that because McKinsey put out a study that Black women build some of the most diverse teams. So I stand on that. Black women tend to build some of the most astute and diverse teams, but not even that. Um, I hire a diversity of people. So I had a situation at a company. I was a VP, but I worked on a project, and it was mainly Middle Eastern people who were doing a lot of the work because it was oil field and it was just Middle Eastern money. And I would do meetings. I tried to at the time because the VP was required to travel around and do a couple meetings. Our road show is what we called it. And I would do meetings and I would notice people would kind of turn their backs. And so I had one of the guys tell me, like, Fran, they're not listening to you. And I thank God for, you know, people that God placed in the field sometimes, because I love a frontline worker because I grew up around frontline workers. And so at heart, our family were laborers. My dad eventually owned his own general contracting construction company, but my family is typical laborers. And so I tend to always befriend the front line, because the front line is going to keep you honest. They're going to be like, girl, they ain't listening to that. But I had a guy tell me, friend, they ain't listening to you, because in their culture, women are not supposed to be doing some of the things you're doing. And so what I did was, at first I was like, oh, I was going to get in my feelings. Now, I ain't had no mentor at the time who could tell me, Fran, this is what you need to do. It was pretty early in my career. I made BP quick. And so what I ended up doing was taking a guy from my team and, like, you know what? Because I went home at night. Every time I get hurt about something, I think that my thinking becomes clear. So I went home and laid in the bed and I was like, okay, I know what I'm gonna do. So when I went back to work the next day, I took one of my most white, malest, he hung the suit well. And I was like, you gonna go talk to them. And so every time I had a message, I was like, go tell them that. You go over there, you're going to do the road show for me. Now, people would say, why did you give up power to somebody to do the road show when that was a VP job? I could have been in my feelings and said, oh, I'm so committed to positional power. But to me, that was strategic. Like, you work for me. So if everything you're going to say on this paper is what I'm going to tell you to say, and I'm going to sit here and watch you say it in the audience, and you're not going to deviate from that. But people were like, you let him do the road show. Are you afraid he's going to take your job? And I'm like, no, because in reality, you're not going to be everybody's flavor. And is the goal to make people safe and send them home alive? Or is the goal for you to be the star of the show to make people safe and send them home alive? And so for me, I have really laid down a lot of my skin, because if I'm in this to be effective, then my methodology sometimes may be unorthodox, and it ain't about how I feel at the end of the day. It's about getting the results. And so that's sometimes what I tell Laynnea, like, let it go, let your person go do it. Don't stress
And
yourself
I've
out,
done that. Yeah, I had to.
Yeah.
So something I figured out probably in the last few years, kind of studying. So I did research around psychosocial hazards. The one that I knew a lot about was about bullying and harassment because I experienced it, but I didn't realize that it was a hazard. And there's a definition for it. And now the definitions that I found were not sufficient for what I was trying to achieve. So in the interest of adding to the body of knowledge, it said that a psychosocial hazard is a psychosocial factor that's perceived or experienced by the person exposed as a threat that motivates him to behave in a certain way. Because we perceive threats all the time, but it's not a big enough deal for me to do anything about it. And I say all that to say that the way hazards are not biased at all. The hazard isn't biased. What's biased is the person who's looking at the hazard.
People.
That's where the bias is.
Yeah.
That's where and frankly, even that bias doesn't make them a bad person. They have a perception about that thing and they feel a certain way about it. And some of our feelings are about our age, our race, our gender, our life experience. There's all these things. And Dr. Fran, to your point, what I would like to see, what I would like to see down the road is systems that say, okay, we determined that it would be valuable to our company to hire and appoint a woman, a Black woman, an Asian woman, a disabled person, a gay person, whoever it is, to a position that has not been there before. And so we are going to put the systems around that person to include letting our clients know that we will not tolerate mistreatment of our people. Otherwise, we will take our business elsewhere. Now, we're going to have differences, but you don't get to mistreat our people, because the most important thing that we do is create a safe environment for them here. I believe that if companies did that, you wouldn't have to go home and process it by yourself, but there would be someone else. In much of the way that you've helped Laynnea, why wasn't there someone in that system that was there to ensure that you were supported too. Because I came up, I'm certain I'm older, both of y'all. But I came up the same way. I had to figure out a bunch of the stuff on my own. And why did I have to figure that out? You want me to be effective. You want me to get your goals accomplished. Why do I have to figure it out? No, you have to figure it out, because what's going on now, what I'm observing, is that there are a generation of people that are going like, look, if you don't fix that before I get there, I won't be there. And I'm certainly not going to
Yeah.
stay.
No. Yeah, that is true.
This
Especially
new generation.
this new
Yeah.
generation. And you are absolutely right. And one of the things is, Fran mentioned this earlier, just be your authentic self. And sometimes it is hard. And now that we are at this level, it's easier for us to be our authentic self. But when I first started, it was hard for me because I can see my counterparts, whether they were male or even a woman, but they weren't a person of color, they would say whatever they want to say. But if I said the same exact thing in the same type of tone, I'm aggressive. Oh no. Oh wow, she's starting trouble. You know what? And so I had to really deal with that. So when you talk about that, it really, made me feel like, okay, what can I do to change that narrative? And you know what? It's okay because it's their problem. It's not my problem. And so when we
That's a
get out of
you
our
problem,
mind,
not a me problem.
yes,
Yes.
when we get out of ourselves and say, you know what? I have to be who I am. And if I can't be who I am, then should I really be at this place?
That yes, that so again, there is a reason that I have a consulting practice of one. There's a reason, because my awareness of psychosocial hazards is higher than most. My sensitivity to it is higher than most. So my standards in that regard are a little bit more exacting than, and particularly big organizations. The bottom line is, you weren't built for me anyway. So you can tell me all you want to bring my whole self. You weren't built for me to bring my whole self. So why don't we be honest and tell me to bring the part of me that's going to help achieve the goal? And I'll try to make me something that I'm not, because I'm at the stage in my life where, frankly, I don't
I
have to
got
do
you
that,
preacher.
and you ain't gonna make me do it. It's just not gonna happen. So why waste our time, trying to? And I feel that way about other people. Let's agree on what it is that we want to achieve, not what you want to achieve. Because I have skin in that game. These workers in these organizations, if all of them leave, you don't get anything done. If all of them get injured and killed, you get nothing done. They are just as essential as whoever it is. CEOs and people sweeping the floor are both important. They may get paid differently, but they're just as important, because otherwise the CEO doesn't go sweep the floor him or herself. If you don't really need these people, then don't bring those people in. And again, these systems, I believe, should be designed from the foundation that way, and those that aren't need to be modified to be that way. Otherwise, people need to find them some other place to be, because there's many more opportunities out there with the gifts and talents that these human beings have.
Oh, they love your gifts and talents. Like I've had every CEO I've ever worked for since I've excelled up high. I want to pick your brain. It's like, no, because I'm the magic. You could pick my brain all day. I had at a company, remain nameless. What should we tell the workers? We'll go get Fran. They like her. It's like, are y'all serious? Like they
Yeah,
seriously
they'll
said,
just
you need to come
say
back
that
to
out
the
loud.
office.
Yeah, say it
You
out
need
loud.
to come back to the office because they need your advice on what we need to tell the workers because we can't give them what we promised. So you know what I went back and said? You got to give them what they promised. These people are, and then they were like, and then it literally when we sat in that room for an hour, them coming back to say, okay, we're gonna give them that. And then they looked at me and said, what is that good enough for you? It's like it should be good enough for
You.
you, you know. And so I said, we're doing what we promised. Isn't that good enough for everybody? But you come to get me to make you do the right thing as if I'm the only one with a moral compass. But because the workers like you is what my president told me. He wanted to talk to you because the workers like you.
That's right. I don't understand why there are those who don't see that you can be kind, you can be caring about other people, and you can still get great performance. As a matter of fact, I'll get more performance out of you when you're just being a turd, than if I just be a kind person. To include, sometimes that means the best thing I can do for this person is help them be successful doing another thing, because this thing is, we've done everything we could to help them, but they're not good at this. So let's find them something else, even if that means it's at another company, and we should go out and help them find. Look, we have a company. We're going to call them. We're going to make a referral. That's what we should be doing. That's not what we do all the time. But I'll tell you that I'll say this, and I got one final question for you all. My skills and talents come with a cost, and the cost associated with that is a psychologically healthy and safe environment. If you don't want to give that, I'll take it. I'll take it elsewhere, because that that is not that part. That's not negotiable.
But
Because
you
I
got
found
agency now. Imagine the young safety leaders who don't have agency. They need this check. They need this money. And they align themselves with a company, because it's a lot of these road companies out there. And then they start preaching this rhetoric. Me and Laynnea were at a round table at ASSP. You know what company I'm talking about. And they were caping for this company. And I said, no, 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 no. Stop. You do not put production standards on people like this. And you think it's normal.
that's right.
How would you feel if that was your wife, your mom, your sister? Now the room goes silent. It's like, why are you, because you're sitting in a seat of leadership, knowing it is wrong, but you're being incentivized off of it? Why can't you see the non-humanity in that?
Again, I believe that we are in a stage where even entry level people have to understand the agency that they bring to this job. And I had someone on the podcast talking about the importance of me working on my own financial independence, so I'm not as dependent on people mistreating me to get a little bit. So maybe that means that I get a used car instead of a new one right now, or a smaller house, because it is not worth the money, is not worth the emotional damage that people expose themselves to. So I'm telling younger people, don't do it. Don't sacrifice your emotional and mental health for an extra dollar, because you're going to pay that dollar down the road. You do have value. As a matter of fact, and again, I'm going to interview someone here real soon who's in their 20s, and what they do as a consultant is teach young people how not to get into stressful jobs. That's what they do. They're teaching people how, don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth sacrificing your emotional and mental health just to get a higher position. If they're not going to treat you well, find that environment that will treat you well for the glorious gifts that you have. So, final question. What's up next for SHE Unfiltered? Tell me something. Tell me something. Who wants to start? Either one of y'all. What's up next for y'all? What's going on? Laynnea, what's going on?
Yes, we are so excited, because coming up in June will be 1 year. We can't believe it already. 1 year. Thank God. It's been 1 year for us doing this. And like Fran alluded to earlier, we started this to raise and elevate the voices that are not typically heard, and those voices. And it's important, for us to do that and be our authentic selves. And that's what we are going to continue to do. We're going to talk about those topics and have those discussions that our people are afraid to talk about. And we want people to be authentic. And we love our guests. And we like to hear, what is it that they really, really are passionate about? And even that dialogue we have, Fran and I, with our guests, we want them to be comfortable and no judgment, no judgment. And one thing that I wanted to add is, I talked about it earlier about ambition, right? I'm very ambitious. So it was actually because of one of our episodes that we had, about PhDs, women and PhDs. Yes, that really, I was talking to Fran about this, and that episode, and even talking to Fran, really inspired me even more to go back to school to get my PhD. So I'm in school right now getting my doctoral degree, and it's about what kind of like we're talking about. Not so much psychological safety, but the the reasons why minorities are having these incidents. They are continuing to go higher, but is the training that we're given, does it relate to them? And so we talk about psychological safety. Are we talking above them? Can I talk Ebonics or am I slang and not be looked at differently? And so these are some of the things that we really want to do for SHE Unfiltered. Not only just have our guests, but really inspire and empower our listeners.
Yeah, one thing you made me think about, and I'll let you wrap it up for us, Dr. Fran. And you all may know this, but I've been recently talking about the fact that a Black worker in the United States has a 40.5% greater chance of getting killed at work than everybody else. And that's a problem for the system. It's not a problem for the individual. It's a problem for a system that would be okay with a 40% higher fatality rate for any group of workers. Hispanic workers ethnically are in the very same range. There's something wrong with that when the systems don't work the same. They're not equitable for everyone. I think a lot of that starts with the approach to psychological safety, because nobody is physically harmed without first being psychosocially harmed. So, Dr. Fran,
I'll even piggyback on
go
that.
ahead.
The system, like you said earlier, Dr. Daniels, the system is working as planned. That is a carryover from chattel slavery. I mean, let's just be honest. The average age of the average lifespan of slaves from the sugar plantation was only 7 to 8 years. So workers were always dispensable. And so, is the system working as planned or is it not? But on a positive note, and we talk about where SHE Unfiltered is going. Life has been lifing us a little bit, but we have so many guests that have reached out to us that have interest because they like our format. They like that we feature them. So we're hopeful that we're going to not just shed more light on safety professionals in niche areas and unknown safety professionals and center them, in the light, because I believe everybody deserves their time in the light. But we want to talk to workers too. That's something that we keep saying, like, man, we gotta get some workers on here, because if we're ever going to push the envelope and change safety, it's going to start with the workers. It's not going to start with us being in these little niches trying to tell them what safety should be to them, but it's going to take a lot of listening, a lot of self-reflection. That's sometimes what I think is wrong with our profession. We are in an echo chamber. We listen to ourselves. And so we have to sometimes find a way to pitch that back to the workers to say, we had young
Yeah, we
workers
did have
on.
young workers.
And boy, did they tear
Oh,
us.
yes. They was
Yes.
very authentic.
And so we want to feature more people and we want to keep going. There are times we want to quit because it takes a lot of work. But then every time we say we want to quit because we're like, it's like she's doing her PhD. I'm teaching on the side. I work a full-time job as a VP of safety in the energy. And so we want to quit, but we can't because our guests are keeping us, like this is something
This is our
special. You got to
passion.
keep
We love
going.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So that's what's up next for us. Who knows where we're going to go? We love this hour with you. Like, oh my God, we love this hour with you. So if you want to have us back again, maybe in a year to say, hey, what have y'all done in a year? We would
Yes,
love to come back.
exactly.
Yes.
Well, I'm certain that our paths will cross, and they're going to cross probably physically before you know it. I am really just honored to have both of you. I want to encourage both of you to, keep it going, keep it going. You are actually going to be, by the time this episode is released, by 92nd, if I'm not mistaken, 92nd episode.
Yeah,
Right at
congratulations.
So I started about a year before you did, and I have no intention of quitting anytime soon because these are words that need to be heard. They're words, and they're words that need to be heard, and there are people. Safety doesn't
discriminate. And the solutions to staying safe, they don't discriminate. It's the people that do, and often it is just people need to hear it from a different voice. That's all.
So can
Folks
we
have
hold
good
you
ideas.
to being on our podcast, being on SHE Unfiltered?
Just let me know. Just let me know.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
all over
all
that.
right.
I'm all over that. All over that. As a matter of fact, so again, we're recording now, but this episode will come out it'll come out before you all have your year in, and yes, let's do that. Let's do that. It would be my honor and pleasure to be able to to share whatever I can share with you and your audience. And again, I think this is that's what I'm observing. I'm to the point now where I'm watching and listening to more podcasts than I do network TV, because network TV is sometimes it's like, I'm not sure if I want to watch that. And it's also good to be able to talk to people that I can reach out to and know they're like real people who have real lives and real situations. Something we talked about before we started recording. People got to get through traffic to get to record stuff, but that's real. That's what's really going on. So again, thank you so much to both of you for the gift of your time and for the benefit of your expertise. So if you're watching this episode on the Flourish DX YouTube page, please do like, subscribe, and share. Most folks listen, but some folks watch. If you're watching and listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. I hope something you've heard will bring you back in the future. Previous episodes of the podcast can be found at psychealthandsafetyusa.com. And please do become a part of the Psych Health and Safety USA movement by linking with us and subscribing on LinkedIn. We'll look forward to our next conversation on the next episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. Thanks very much. Tune in each Friday for new episodes of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. If you have a story or know of one that needs to be told, reach out to us on LinkedIn or send an email to david@id2-solutions.com or go to the Flourish DX website at flourishdx.com. We'll see you next time.